going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Hope you guys had a great Easter weekend for those that celebrate it. So yeah, today we are taking a look at another Warhammer video. This one was requested by one of my YouTube members. This is a video by the Scholar's Lore, the founding of the Sisters of Battle, Warhammer 40k lore. So yeah, we're going to get more into the Battle Sisters. I don't really know a ton about the Battle Sisters. I know some of what I know was from some vague stuff that was talked about in some other videos that I watched, video over Saint Celestine and some other things, but I'm eager to learn more about them and see how they got founded, etc., etc. As you can see, we are doing this reaction here live, so if any of you guys would like to come and join in these live reactions, you can click the join button down below and take a look at the YouTube membership tiers and see if any of those have any kind of interest to you. You can come and join in our discussions. We also have a Discord you can come and join with Warhammer 40k and a bunch of other topics that we talk about in Discord. Post your 40k armies and any kind of stuff you'd like to, and any kind of videos you might want me to check out, you can request in there as well. And there's also a link for that down below in the description. And there will be a link to this video without my commentary and reaction, and to the Scholar's Lore channel down below in the description as well. But for now, let's just get on in to the video. Let's see here. Boop. Audio is good. Let's go. Heretics crave the cleansing fire of absolution. They need not. Gabbit, video, I was reading that. Heretics crave the cleansing fire of absolution. They need not fear, for we shall deliver it to them. Canonist Jessamine, Order of the Sacred Rose.
The Adepta Sororitas are a division of the ecclesiarchy, the one singular church of the Imperium of Man, which guides the worship and praise of all humanity towards that of the God Emperor. The Sororitas, who are more commonly known as the Sisterhood, serve a multitude of roles throughout the Imperium.
I bet they have crazy parties on the weekend.
Ranging from the Order's Famulus, who act as diplomats and advisors to high-ranking Imperial agents, to the Order's Hospitaller, who organize and operate within the various hospitals and medical facilities across the galaxy. Whilst they perform many non-violent missions and act as a vital part of the Imperium, they are perhaps best known for their order's militant, the Sisters of Battle. The all-female coven of warrior women are famed across the galaxy for their unwavering faith in the Emperor, as well as for their ruthless efficiency in purging the many enemies of man, which they do so with a burning sense of retributive fury.
So they're not just about battle. They also do, healing work. I would assume they do some kind of like sermons or teaching, helping people bolster their faith and morale when things are down. Interesting. So it's not just about them going out and kicking the shit out of everything. They have more than they have a greater purpose than just that. Okay.
Which they do so with a burning sense of retributive fury. It is a common mistake to regard the
Bro, she's got the Punisher skull, dude. That's what I'm talking about.
Adepta Sororitas and the Sisters of Battle as being one in the same, when in actuality they are functionally separate. Whilst, yes, almost all within the Imperium will be familiar with both groups, the Sisters only act as the militant arm of the Adepta Sororitas, who themselves exist as a non-military branch of the ecclesiarchy.
I guess the question that I would have off the bat here, like seeing this picture here with this woman with wings. I know Saint Celestine has, wings as well. How many of like the Battle Sisters, or, I guess Saints of the Battle Sisters, have wings? And like, what is it that gives them that? Is it just their faith in the Emperor that gives them that gives them that miracle? I believe in the Saint Celestine video that I watched, it was when she acquired the armor of another fallen saint in a tomb that's how she acquired the wings or something like that, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I'm just curious how that works. Very ornate jetpacks. Okay. So that's just like, for a lot of them, it's just decoration. It's not, as far as I know, only Celestine has them all the time. Other sisters can sometimes manifest wings through faith. Okay. So it's just a miracle that happens in a time of dire need when their faith is like pushed to the limit, kind of a thing. That's like a brief moment of going Super Saiyan. I got you.
They are most commonly called upon to deal with issues of foul heresy, where the misguided and estranged citizens of the Imperium have willingly shunned the teachings of the God Emperor, all to seek out powers from tutors who lurk within the darkest recesses of unreality. In these cases, the sisters will descend, ready to purge and wipe mankind's slate clean of the taint of treachery, burning away any remains which may continue to fool and lead the lost sheep of man astray. As such, the interests of the Sisters of Battle often has some overlap with that of the fabled Inquisition, who are infamous for their ruthless opposition to even the faintest rumor of heretical activity.
See, I thought I remember in one of the previous videos that I watched that they were somewhat of a branch of the Inquisition, or at least that's how it started, and they might have formed their own thing. I assume he's going to talk about that more in this video, being it's called the founding of the Sisters of Battle. But that's what I thought I remembered originally. So I guess let's see what he says here.
Opposition to even the faintest rumor of heretical activity. Whilst they exist as separate organizations, the two groups have become rather intertwined. And as we will soon discuss, we will uncover as to the reasons why the Sisters of Battle have been appointed as the chamber militant of the Inquisition's own Ordo Hereticus.
Okay, so they kind of just over time through working together have gotten kind of deputized, I guess you could say, as part of the Inquisition. They're still kind of like their own thing, but they work under like maybe a branch of the Inquisition, it sounds like. Bricky mentioned in his video that the Order Hereticus of the Inquisition can call the sisters as a military force. Okay. So yeah, they're almost kind of like deputized, and when needed, the Inquisition can call upon them to do things. Which I feel like the Inquisition can do that to anyone anyway, right? The Inquisition has the authority to, like, even the Grey Knights, those that know of the Grey Knights, the Inquisition and, you know, Inquisitors that are high enough can be like, yo, dog, we got some shit going on. Y'all need to get out here. And, you know, they got to hop too. Just like the Order of Aemilius calls on the Grey Knights, right?
In any case, today we shall investigate the history of the Sisterhood. We will begin by learning.
Yeah, I'm just saying, all these women here that I'm seeing was artwork of, they can fix me. I'm just saying, they can fix me.
Of their founding
And show me the faith.
Tale, through to their turbulent role within the heretical reign of blood, before finally ending with their reformation, which solidified the Sisters of Battle into their current state. In order to understand why the Sisterhood was founded, we must first understand the landscape of the Imperium during some of its most corrupt and dark of times. The earliest records of the Adepta Sororitas places their founding date as having occurred at some point during the 36th millennium, during a tumultuous period known as the Age of Apostasy. It had been preceded by a slow yet unrelenting expansion of the ecclesiarchy, which had grown from but another cog within the vast engine of the Imperium, to becoming perhaps the most influential and powerful group upon Terra. Furthermore, the head ecclesiarch had gained a truly unprecedented level of control over the various branches of the Imperium, to the point where his directives were seen as being as more important than of those from the High Lords.
Damn, that's a lot of power then, yeah. If he essentially one man were to have that much sway over the other High Lords, he would almost run the Imperium at that point, right?
Were seen as being as more important than of those from the High Lords. The actual mission of the ecclesiarchy had also shifted from that of venerating the god emperor into enforcing the will of the ecclesiarch, with every citizen
That
now
makes
being
sense.
subject to the large tithes necessary in maintaining such a sacred organization. As stated,
I mean, that would make sense. The church would need to have like its own military force to enforce things. You know, I mean, that's what happened back in the day too with, you know, Rome. So I'm sure that this is kind of what that is based off of.
in maintaining such a sacred organization. As stated, the level of influence and control which the ecclesiarchy had gained over the imperium meant that their ministers could dictate the policies and strategies of the high lords. This meant that every single decision which could steer the path of the imperium could only be enacted if it had the support of the watchful and meddlesome ecclesiarch.
Damn.
This
That could definitely, yeah, wrap a lot of things up in red tape and make it difficult to actually get things done. I remember in the video, I forget exactly which one, but it was going over the Imperial Guard, I believe it was, and I'm talking about how much red tape they actually have to go through in order just to use like nukes and things like that on the battlefield. So I could only imagine this, you know, the administrative issues that would be going on trying just to simply get things done, and they could be their own worst enemy, essentially.
the support of the watchful and meddlesome ecclesiarch. This reverential position at the head of their organization was tremendously bolstered during this period, to the point where it was rather worrying to the other high lords, who now found their titles as being somewhat meek in comparison.
I would understand why.
The head ecclesiarch was seen as being the sole leader who could speak with the true authority of the emperor himself. And as such, all citizens and servants of the imperium quickly began to worship his every word as sacred law.
That's pretty crazy, man. Yeah. Being able to essentially announce yourself as like, the word of the emperor flows through me. I mean, again, this is very kind of, he's the Pope now, and, you know, I have a direct line to God. It's basically kind of the same thing. I have a direct line to the emperor. He talks through me. You know, my word is the word of the emperor. I wonder, you know, because this is what's happened. What we're going over here now is the past. It's talking about the founding. But I wonder, like with Gilliman's return and with the Lion's return in the present, you know, and their influence, I wonder how much power he actually has now with their return, and if that has, like, you know, pulled the balance of power away from, you know, whoever the head of the ecclesiarchy is now. You know what I mean? Because I would think that a lot of people seeing the return of the sons of the emperor would look to them probably for a little bit more leadership than just someone from the church. You know what I mean? 40k red tape bureaucracy is so incomprehensibly complex and bloated, it's a miracle nothing is done at all. That's what it seems like, man. It seems like there's so much bureaucracy and red tape that just nothing, it's amazing that anything just gets done at all. Yeah, a lot of these people of faith cults cause plenty of trouble of that kind in the Imperium. Yeah.
Because of their newfound elevated position within the Byzantine governance of the Imperium, it is of
Byzantine. I literally was thinking that. I was going to say it sounds very Byzantium, but he said it for me.
elevated position within the Byzantine governance of the Imperium, it is of no surprise that they also received the greatest share of the imperial tithe, a form of owed taxation which all planets had to pay in order to continue serving the emperor.
Gilman hasn't really grappled with the ecclesiarchy yet. He did clean out the Council of Terror and the High Lords, but he was worried about the faith of the emperor and the Imperium would collapse. I mean, yeah, there's only so much, like, there would have to be a balance between that, because it's clear that the worship of the emperor and the church is kind of really what is the glue that is holding the Imperium together. Their faith in the God Emperor and something greater and his ability to lead humanity to something greater is the ideal that everyone in the 40k universe of humanity is like grown up with. So like if that were to disappear overnight, yeah, you would have to have something to replace that, and there just isn't there. He did scream at the priest there right after he got back. I bet. Like it just really would be interesting. Again, I always say this, but like just seeing this kind of political intrigue in the 40k universe, seeing Gilliman return, knowing who the Emperor was and what he really wanted to accomplish, and now seeing him being worshipped as a god and whatnot, and like seeing him having to deal with this, especially like because that's what Gilliman's like specialty was like governance and empire building and the whole political side of things, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it would just be interesting to see. Almost solely son of the Emperor, blessed art thou, and Gilliman is like, I need someone to get this man out of here right now. Yeah, exactly. About to get slapped.
All planets had to pay in order to continue serving the Emperor.
But it's of course no coincidence that, you know, the head of the church is the one that gets the highest share of the imperial tithes that coming in. Quite the coincidence.
This created a great rift between the ecclesiarchy and the other bureaucratic elements of the Imperium, with a particular...
Is this fucking Ozzy Osbourne here in the 40k universe, dude? Is he about to bite a fucking chicken's head off, or what was it, chicken or a bat? I don't remember. And then we got Captain Jack Sparrow in the 40k universe. You know what I mean? And this I don't know who this dude is. Looks like a vampire or something.
Particular rivalry appearing with the Adeptus Administratum. The untold billions of scribes and scholars who toil away their days within the great office blocks of the...
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you were to go out there and say, you know, the Emperor never wanted any kind of religion, and that it was all about science and the progression of science, and humanity's progression of enlightenment through the idea of science and the pursuit of science, then yeah, of course, it would be the complete opposite. And it would start a civil war, because there would be certain people that would obviously follow him, especially a lot of Astartes. But then there would be a lot of people that, you know, get power through the church that would stick with the church, and it would just cause another civil war.
The administrators of scribes, tus administratum. The untold billions of scribes and scholars who toil away their days within the great office blocks of the administratum were primarily responsible for maintaining the many logistical and governmental tasks which were necessary for managing the great iron beast of the Imperium. However, since a great deal of their funding had now been siphoned off to fuel the zealous pyres of the ecclesiarchy, they soon found that organizing and supplying various parts of the Imperium was becoming a simply impossible task.
Coincidence.
Seeing their failure, the ecclesiarchy soon came to swoop in and relieve the administratum from some of their more secular duties.
Of course. Of course. The government can't get it done, but the church can. Look at us. We're the benevolent church. Hungry, we'll feed you. You need water, we'll you know, give you some clean water. You need clothing, we'll clothe you. We'll give you a place to sleep. Just believe in us and believe in the Emperor.
This granted them with the power to ultimately dictate which wars should be declared, of which sectors should receive the most resources, and of which directives the Imperium as a whole should take. Eventually, this led to the ecclesiarchy to also appoint their own...
Is this David Lopan? We got David Lopan in the 40k universe here. Was he about to fight Egg Shan? Little Big Trouble in Little China reference for you guys. Yes, I am a boomer. Okay, and that is a great movie. Don't at me.
Own chosen lords and nobles to rule over entire sectors and star systems, essentially solidifying their influence and power over all of imperial space. Their significant rise to power was not entirely tolerated by the fellow organizations of the Imperium. The Administratum had long existed as the central power upon Terra, and they would not meekly watch as their position was stolen out from under them. In response to the actions of the ecclesiarch, those within the administratum began a large-scale operation to once again bring about their own premiership and to see the retraction of their rivals.
Bro, I couldn't imagine living on a planet like this, man. Like, this would just be awful. Just all these people, like, packed in, like, so densely like this. No, like, nature whatsoever. All the pollution. Like, oh, that would be fucking terrible, dude. Bureaucrats and priests about to be fighting in the streets. Yep.
Over the course of the 35th millennium, they were somewhat successful, being able to wrangle most of their control back from the Bastion of Faith. As a result of this, however, the new restrictions and interferences of the administratum soon led the ecclesiarchy to take a rather drastic measure to protect themselves. The head ecclesiarch ordered for the relocation of the entire organization away from Terra, and ordained that their new home would be found upon the great cardinal world of Ophelia.
Interesting.
Aside from Terra and Mars, this planet was perhaps the greatest source of wealth and faith to be found within the Imperium, and it did not take long until its entire populace was dedicated towards a new mission of zealous fury.
I mean, it's smart, you know, if you're getting opposition to the point where you're losing power, relocate your headquarters from Terra to, you know, another world where you can fortify yourself. So I mean, yeah, it's smart. Yeah, I mean, it would obviously be kind of still would be like a defeat of it in and of itself, right? Because you're moving yourself off of Holy Terra. That's where the Emperor is. That's where the Golden Throne is. That's where the faith is supposed to be. So having to be relocated, you know, that's obviously got to be a hard pill to swallow, but still smart.
Free from the influence of Terra, the ecclesiarchy was able to reinvigorate itself, with the majority of tithes being allocated towards the construction of colossal monuments of reverence towards the God Emperor all across the galaxy. In addition, it was decreed that in order for their organization to best serve the masses, that they would require their own dedicated military force, and these men would be known as the Frateris Templars.
Interesting.
The original founding of this group dated back to the 32nd millennium, where they were tasked with standing vigil around the great ecclesiarchal palace upon Terra.
So this isn't that far after the heresy, right? Like, the heresy, like, ended in, like, the 3100s somewhere in there, right? I want to say. So this isn't that far after that.
However, due to the large-scale changes within the Imperium, their new role would be more similar to that of a private army. This army swelled to such a prodigious size that some would claim it to rival that of the Imperial Guard itself.
Right, yeah. It's crazy to think that modern 40k is less zealous and corrupt than during the Age of Apostasy. I mean, yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because, like, when the Emperor gets wounded and is no longer really able to rule and all the Primarchs are gone, there's a power vacuum. And so, yeah, it's like, what do you do? I mean, they established the High Lords, but it didn't seem like they were really prepared to run the ship, so to speak. And so the faith kind of took over. You know what I mean? So, heresy was 31st millennium, yeah. That's what I thought.
But the ancient texts from this period have been long since lost, and we will never truly know the scale of their manpower.
Dude, there's so much information in the 40k universe that's lost. It's so insane. It honestly makes me wonder, you know, about, like, the library at Alexandria and how much information that was actually lost from there about the ancient world and things.
Nevertheless, after several hundred years had passed, the great temples and basilica of Ophelia VII had grown to outshine all others, and yet there was still a desire to return home. The head ecclesiarch at the time, a man known as Grigor XI, ordered for the entire ecclesiarchy to return to terror, and that the organization could only exist if it stood at the side of the emperor himself.
Right.
As such,
So they moved to another planet to consolidate and gain power, and now they're trying to go back to Terra to be by the emperor. Interesting. So, yeah. Well, obviously, them moving to a different world worked out for them, and now they're trying to go back. So I guess let's see how this power, play is going to work out. I like the fact that the lore is subject to unreliable sources, lost information. Right, yeah. It leaves things open to be interpretation. That's one of the great things about the Souls games and Elden Ring and stuff like that. There's certain information that is known, that is fact, and then there's a lot of information that's left open to interpretation. And that's what makes the universes so interesting, is when you can kind of self-interpret certain things.
Undertaking of restoring the old halls of the ecclesiarchal palaces ensue.
Bro, my ear is
itching. And
itching.
Unfortunately, this required a tremendous injection of funds, all sourced from new tithes sent out across the Imperium. Whilst many worlds were loyal and faithful to these new demands, there were thousands of governors who saw them as being simply outrageous, and they refused to bankrupt their planets to further the unconscionable goals of the ecclesiarchy.
I bet that didn't go over well.
The armies of the Frateris Templars were deployed across the galaxy with the express orders to crush any upstarts who would dare to withhold resources from the most holy of branches within the Imperium.
So, what would the Astartes do in that kind of situation? Did they just sit on the sidelines? Or would they, be like, nah, dog, this planet's under our protection? Fuck you.
The violence here soon expanded to involve those who dared to speak out against the ecclesiarchy in any capacity. All across the Imperium, worlds were plunged into the flames of war.
That brings up actually a good question, because some of the Astartes that are still alive in the 40k time were alive, back during the heresy and before. So they know, what the Empire was beforehand. So it's interesting that did any of them at any time speak up and try to not allow some of this stuff to happen with the church and whatnot? You know what I mean? They didn't care for the most part, unless it involves a planet they have a pact to defend. Bureaucracy is so bad that a lot of information that is there. It's just that there are worlds that are libraries were Yeah, so the information, what information could be there spread out amongst the Empire, and would just be hard to get to. Astartes mostly learned to live with the ecclesiarchy. They're very detached from politics now that the Emperor and the Primarchs are gone. I found that interesting, because you would still think that they would understand that whatever happens to the government is still gonna affect them, right? You know what I mean? So you would think that they would want to have some kind of representation in the government, maybe not ruling, but maybe a representative in the High Lord's table, so that someone could speak for them, or maybe a couple of Astartes from different chapters could speak for them. You know what I mean? So that they would have some kind of influence in how things are done. I don't know. I just find it interesting that they were just whatever, dude. Y'all do what you want. I mean, I guess it could be a situation where there's we're Astartes, we don't give a fuck about your petty little human whatever. Also, right after the heresy, Astartes were under a big microscope. I can see that, yeah. True. Because, there's a meme I saw the other day, where it's the Astartes are the ones that fell to the ruinous powers, but the regular humans are the ones that stayed loyal. You know what I mean? So, I can see that.
With the actions of the worlds were plunged into the flames of war, with the actions of the Templars becoming increasingly brutal and deadly in their zealotry against any who they claimed as being heretical. As a rather sinister point, due to the sheer volume of resources held by the ecclesiarchy, as well as from their reverential position, it seemed that their armies could draw from an endless well of supplies, and that none could dare to speak out against their violent actions. While the ecclesiarchy were once again cementing their control over the Imperium, a series of immense and cataclysmic warp storms began to manifest across the entire galaxy, separating star systems from one another and isolating.
Kind of like Europe and Hitler before World War II. They started to see it was a problem, but they just kept hoping it would go away before they would need to deal with it. Right.
Isolating huge galaxy, separating star systems from one another, and isolating huge swathes of human territory from the light of the Astronomicon. Hundreds of worlds were overrun by the hellish incursions of demonic forces.
Gotcha.
With entire populations being dragged into the warp as a succulent treat to the neverborn. Drukhari raiding parties similarly saw this as a tantalizing opportunity, and their vast pirate fleets slipped out from the webway to ravage entire star systems. Meanwhile, any areas which could still be reached by Imperial forces soon found themselves being subject to the zealous patrols of the ecclesiarchal fleets. The most meek and humble of citizens quickly devolved their usual methods of prayer into self-flagellation and fanatical worship in order to prove their impassioned faith to the God Emperor. Rabid cultists quickly appeared, preaching the most extreme of reasons as to why the galaxy had been plunged into chaos, with there being little hope of peace once again returning to the Imperium. The Fraterris Templars were brutal in their response to these groups, with entire communities being purged by their flames for daring to speak such heretical thoughts into existence. It was not uncommon for these forces to subject vast populations to endure unspeakable acts of mutilation, all to seek some penance for their sacrilegious crimes against the God Emperor.
That sounds very Dark Ages. Sounds very much Dark Ages.
It was here, during this truly chaotic time, that the infamous lord known as Goge Vandire first rose to prominence. Following a series of brutal assassinations, bribes and threats from the Fraterris Templars, he managed to secure the positions of both head ecclesiarch as well as master of the administratum. With this dual leadership role, he became the de facto ruler of man, holding the two most powerful and influential positions in the entire Imperium, allowing him to dictate the imperial war machine to follow his every whim and desire. Unfortunately, his premiership is remembered only as being the worst period of civil war experienced throughout the Imperium since the Horus Heresy, and it is more commonly referred to as his reign of blood.
Good job, buddy.
Despite the untold chaos brought about by the terrible age of apostasy, there was a light which emerged from the darkness, as this was to be where the sisterhood first emerged. The huge warp storms which had ravaged the galaxy were beginning to subside, and though many worlds and sectors were still cut off entirely, it seemed that the Imperium would be able to become an interconnected stellar empire once more. A key point to mention here is that Vandire was an incredibly paranoid man.
I bet.
And due to his megalomaniacal desire to control all facets of the Imperium, he had dispatched an enormous network of spies to monitor and report any errant cults which may appear.
I was going to say, like, anyone that has that much power over an empire that vast has got to be paranoid. Because you know there's people that are they're coming for you. You know what I mean? And you don't know who you can trust.
He wished for mankind to worship the Emperor only as he dictated them to, and to stray from his word was perceived to be heresy, with only death acting as a suitable punishment to their crimes. Upon a nondescript agri-world known as San Leor, Vandire was informed of a rather small but still stray cult who had devoted their lives towards the faithful reverence of the God Emperor. Whilst initially outraged at their insolence, he soon grew to see this group with a strange sense of fascination. The coven was known as the Daughters of the Emperor.
Vandire out here living the Isekai protagonist life with the brides of the Emperor. Yeah, he's got his little harem, it sounds like.
And it was made up of women who led a pure, ascetic life, entrenched only in the spiritual following of their liege, with their utter dedication being placed in their adoration towards their god. Whilst they lived peacefully, it was noted that this group trained endlessly to perfect their skills in battle, seemingly as a route to prove their faith towards the emperor. Keeping his intentions as a close secret to himself, Vandire organized a pilgrimage to meet with this group, and with an armed contingent, he departed to Saint-Léor. Before his official visit, the Frateries Templars first entered the surrounding communities, threatening the inhabitants with executions if they did not worship the very ground which Vandire was soon to walk upon. As the high ecclesiarch arrived, he was met with the forced adoration of his subjects, who at gunpoint lavished him with praise and reverence as the true representative of the god emperor. When he eventually reached the daughter's temple, however, he was not graced with the same love. One of their coven expressed that they did not recognize his position of head ecclesiarch as holding any merit towards their faith, and so he would not be permitted to enter their grounds peacefully.
Damn, man, she got some balls, whoever that is. She says, bitch, get the fuck out of here, fucking scrub.
While some expected him to fly into an unmatched rage at this rebuttal, he had predicted there to be some initial distrust, and so he promised to prove to the worshippers that he was in fact a true servant to the emperor. Clutching his rosarius, he ordered one of his bodyguards to shoot him in the chest, claiming that the emperor had chosen him, and that he would be protected from certain death by his deific grace.
This ain't gonna work out well.
With trembling hands, the guard lifted his weapon and let flash an energy blast from his las pistol. The round would have struck Vandire in his blackened heart. However, the Lord was consumed by an aura of blinding golden light. As the halo began to fade, it revealed him to still be standing, as confident as ever in his heavenly protection. Seeing this act of God, the sisterhood collectively fell to their knees in reverence for Vandire, swearing their fealty to him as the emissary of their liege, and by his will changed their names from the Daughters of the Emperor to the Brides of the Emperor. In truth, this was an orchestrated ploy by the High Lord. The Rosarius, which he held on to, was a sacred relic of the ecclesiarchy, which contains within it a mighty energy field. And
you knew there was going to be some kind of tomfoolery. You knew he couldn't have been straight up about it.
Of the ecclesiarchy, which contains within it a mighty energy field, and it was only by its protection that he survived the shot, not that he had any form of graceful shielding from the emperor. In any case, the brides were instructed to leave the planet, where they became the personal bodyguards of Vandire. To them, he was truly seen as one who had been chosen by the emperor, and so his protection grew to be of paramount importance to them. To support his newfound force, Vandire ordered for them to undergo an all-encompassing training regiment, provided by the various masters of the Imperial Guard. In addition, they were to be supplied with the finest of war gear, with their old uniforms being replaced by customized and striking suits of power armor.
Okay, upgrades.
At the apex of the Reign of Blood, Vandire had reached an unmatched level of power within not only the Imperium, but also on Holy Terra itself. There were none who could control his whims, and all were subjected to his maniacal wishes, with any opposition being met by accusations of heresy. The great ecclesiarchal palaces upon Terra had fallen into disrepair, as Vandire was utterly focused on spreading his own rule across the Imperium, as opposed to tending to his own organization's home. Deep within his own chambers, it is said that he would withdraw from official duties for days at a time, where he would sit in a meditative trance before finally lashing outwards in a terrible cacophony of pained wails, manically screeching out hundreds of new legislative or directive actions for the Imperium to take. His paranoid mood swings had been the root cause to many of the more extreme or questionable laws which he had put forward as being necessary in the reverence to the God Emperor.
So it sounds like he's going crazy.
Untold millions of innocents across the galaxy were sentenced to death by immolation for even the faintest suspicion of heresy, and the spiritual shadows cast by these so-called holy fires did not go unnoticed by those who were still loyal to the true teachings of the Emperor. Whilst all this was occurring, a humble preacher known as Sebastian Thor had risen to prominence upon the planet of Dimamar. His teachings were based not around throwing one's life away into the fires of zealotry, but instead he focused on showing that the Emperor would feel compassion and mercy to all who held their faith deeply within their hearts.
So we got Space Jesus now. Okay.
With his natural talents in oration, Sebastian traveled to the nearby worlds of his sector, spreading his message to all who had been devastated by the overly righteous actions of the Frateris Templars. His message eventually culminated in the formation of the Confederation of Light, a reformist sect which sought to continue Thor's teachings throughout the galaxy. Their followers would espouse the benefits of temperance and patience, with a particular interest in spreading acts of generosity towards one's community, rather than indulging in the exorbitant displays of opulence which had come to mar the public perception of the ecclesiarchy. It did not take long for Vandaya to receive a dispatch from his spy corps, informing him of this upstart group and their rise to power. Thrown into an enraged fury, the ecclesiarch demanded that his armies bring the flames of retribution to Dimamar and to annihilate this foolish preacher for ever daring to speak out against his rule. A fleet was quickly assembled out of the more zealous of Templars, with the express orders of wiping out any who pledged their
Supposed to be John the Baptist in 40k. That makes sense.
faith towards the new confederation. Rather shockingly, however, as they emerged from warp travel, the Immaterium itself seemed to buckle, and with a deafening screech, a great storm manifested itself out of unreality, engulfing the numerous ships within its tempestuous maw, which were destined to be utterly destroyed by the arcs of otherworldly energy.
Interesting.
Seeing this as a divine message, Sebastian Thor was invigorated with a sense of holy purpose. Furthermore, the wider segmentum had become enamored by his charismatic presence, to the point where his following had swelled to include hundreds of worlds, all of whom saw his word as being faithful and true. Eventually, the Confederation reached a boiling point, and it seemed that the only path left to tread was one which led directly to holy terror. As something of a vast pilgrimage, Thor and his followers set out to travel to the very heart of the Imperium, where they would seek to oust the sacrilegious and wayward lord, and to reinstate the ecclesiarchy as a purely spiritual organization, rather than being the all-encompassing military-political machine which it had become. The Confederation officially denounced Vandaya as a traitor to the Imperium, and it now seemed that an outright civil war was all but inevitable.
Damn. Man lost power real quick. Interesting.
This was only complicated by the commitment of the Fabricator General of the Adeptus Mechanicus, who also stood forward to back Thor. Additionally,
I could absolutely see the Adeptus Mechanicus being against any kind of zealotry going on with any kind of church. Like the more zealotous the Imperium would get, I would assume the less freedoms the Adeptus Mechanicus would end up having to study any of the shit they would want to and kind of do anything with any of the technology they have. So that's like, I feel like that's just a given.
Mechanicus, who also stood forward to back Thor. Additionally, many Space Marine chapters had grown weary from hearing tales of Van Dyer's actions, and so they too called for his abdication, as his tyrannical rule had persisted for far too long.
So the Astartes actually did say no.
In response, Van Dyer and the entire Imperium by extension declared the Marines, Mechanicus and Confederation as traitors. The Frateris Templars were ordered to eliminate all heretical forces wherever they were encountered, and to spare none in their righteous crusade against any who stood against them.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's going to work out very well for you guys. Just going against the Astartes alone, dude, like, I don't know, brother. I don't know, brother. I feel like the writing's already on the wall for y'all.
This was not a simple task to complete, however.
No shit.
And many of his subordinates finally refused.
Meanwhile, the Imperial Palace smells like something burning. Oh, whatever, my job is to guard the Imperial. Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, the custodians are just sitting there. Like, whatever, dude. You don't give a fuck.
To take action against the Emperor's own angels.
That is actually an interesting point. Like, I get that the whole job of the custodians was to, you know, guard the Emperor and the Golden Throne. But again, just like I was saying with the Astartes, you would think they would want to have some kind of say in how certain things are run. I don't know. Because I would just think this is like, maybe it's just because the Emperor didn't actually like order them or entrust them specifically with anything. You know what I mean? So they're just doing what they were told to do and guard the Emperor, you know? But I don't know. I feel like it just feels like they would know what the Emperor would want for the Imperium. And I feel like some of them at least would have some kind of obligation, or feel like they would have some kind of obligation to keep the Imperium in the image the Emperor would want it. But again, it could just be a situation where they were ordered to guard the Emperor and the Golden Throne, and so that's what they're doing. They're following their orders. Right. Okay. I mean, obviously, yeah, there could be more stuff going on with the custodians here that I don't know about yet.
These insolent take action against the Emperor's own angels. These insolent rebels, however, were not provided with an opportunity to repent for their sins, and any who failed to take up their arms in the name of the ecclesiarch were rounded up and burned at the stake. After their long voyage, the crusading forces of the Confederation finally reached Holy Terra. The Space Marines of the Imperial Fists, Black Templars, Soul Drinkers and Firehawks had assembled a task force to be deployed via drop pods into the heart of the ecclesiarchal palace, with the expectation being that Van Dyer would only have a defensive force made up of Frateris Templars at his disposal. Instead, the Marines landed into a kill zone. They saw legions of the heavily armored warrior women, the brides of the Emperor, standing ready and eager to defend Van Dyer. The sisters' power armor was superbly constructed for them, being adorned with imperial icons of faith, and in their hands they wielded the finest of bolt guns, flamers, and plasma weapons, which they unleashed into the Marines with impassioned fury. Since the dark days of the Horus heresy, none thought that war would once again ravage the sanctity of the imperial palace. And yet, through the actions of Van Dyer, it seemed that the very heart of the Imperium was once again breaking. The two armies were quickly ground into a stalemate, with heavy casualties being sustained by both sides from the sheer weight of ordnance and overwhelming fire brought upon them. Neither seemed able to gain any significant ground against the other.
You know, in a lot of these incursions, it makes me wonder why orbital bombardment isn't something that was done more often. You know what I mean? Like, they know unless they've, I guess they could have shielding because it is an Imperial Palace. You know what I mean? So they could have shielding that could prevent that, you know? So they would have to, like, actually drop in troops. But it feels like it would be a situation where it's like, Van Dyer, we know you're all dirt. If you don't surrender, we're just going to open fire and obliterate your palace. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, it's Terra, but at the same time, they could concentrate their fire just on his palace and things can be rebuilt.
And yet, retreat was simply not an option.
But is the Emperor, like, the Golden Throne is separate from where this guy's palace is, right? Are they not two different locations? Isn't the Emperor's, like, Golden Throne its own, like, holy place by itself? Because I would think it would be heresy to have your palace and whatnot so close to the Emperor. You know what I mean? I feel like that would be heresy in and of itself. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
For this terminal, and seemed able to gain any significant ground against the other. And yet, retreat was simply not an option for this terminable conflict. The days dragged into weeks, and then months, with more and more troops dying in the ornate rubble of the once grand imperial palace. Seeing the sheer magnitude of this conflict, not only for its material loss, but also for its spiritual significance.
No, I've seen that argument, and I mean, I pretty much agree. There's already the Sisters of Battle. They're basically female Space Marines. They don't have the genetic mutations, right? But I mean, they have power armor and the same kind of weaponry, and they're just motivated by their faith. Their faith is their shield. That their faith is what gives them the power. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I agree.
Palace. Seeing the sheer magnitude of this conflict, not only for its material loss, but also for its spiritual significance, a fabled centurion of the Adeptus Custodes took it upon himself to end the carnage at the Emperor's doorstep. The custodian moved through the halls of the ecclesiastical palace, unhindered by the chaos of war, and sought out the leader of Van Dyer's bodyguard, a sister known as Alicia Dominica. As a custodian guard, he was seen as speaking and acting with the sole interests of the Emperor in mind, and that his mission would be of the utmost importance for enacting his will. Initially, he and his fellow guards petitioned Alicia and her sisters to end this conflict by abandoning Van Dyer and to join with the true servants of the Imperium. They claimed that the ecclesiarch did not speak for the Emperor and that he was a wayward traitor who would only bring the Imperium low with his actions. After hours of debate, it became clear that the sisters would not relent on their position, and so the centurion decided that it was time to play his final card. The Custodes summoned Alicia to join him in the heart of the imperial palace, to stand before the golden throne and witness the majesty of the Emperor in his flesh. He left his fellow custodians as hostages to the sisters, and then led Alicia and 5 of her companions into the Sanctum Imperialis to bask in the glory of the Emperor's presence. None have ever known exactly what transpired before the Emperor. History does not tell of words which were spoken, nor for how long they stood before his grace, but once their parley was over, and the eternity gates opened once more, Alicia and her sisters are said to have walked out with blazing flames of rage blaring out from their eyes. Alicia Dominica returned to her sisters and denounced Van Dyer as a traitor. With a sorrowful, near-broken heart, she explained the sheer levels of treachery and corruption which Van Dyer had been abusing, and how even his first act of defying death had been a ruse to gain their support.
Man got called out.
She renounced her coven, claiming that they had all been tainted and perverted to suit his traitorous reign, and so instead the sisters reclaimed their name as the Daughters of the Emperor, vowing to return to their old ways of faith, regardless of who stood at the head of the Imperium. She then led a contingent of sisters straight to Van Dyer's chamber and spoke the following words to the corrupted lord.
You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your own decrees have stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and now it is time for you to die.
With
Get a
these
girl.
words, she drew her power sword, which crackled and singed the air itself as it was activated. Van Dyer glanced back from his desk, shaking his head in disagreement, and simply whispered out, "I don't have time to die. I'm too busy." With a slash of her blade, Van Dyer was beheaded, and the rain of blood came to its deathly end.
I mean, it would make sense, right? She would at least have had some visions given to her by the Emperor of what he wanted the Emperor to be, right?
With the death of Van Dyer, the ecclesiarchy and administratum were reformed back into their original separate organizations. Sebastian Thor was appointed as the head ecclesiarch, and he quickly set about to ensure that an event of this magnitude could never occur again. He formed the Ordo Hereticus, a subsect of the infamous Inquisition, with its task being to root out corruption within the Imperium and to ensure that none may dare to oppose the will of the Emperor again. Thor also passed the Decree Passive, which forbade the ecclesiarchy from ever having men-at-arms as a military force. This disbanded the Frateris Templars, who were almost entirely eliminated for their acts of zealotry committed against the Imperium. The specific wording of this decree, however, thankfully did not include any objections to women serving in their armed forces. As such, the Daughters of the Emperor quickly stepped forward to take up their place as the new army of the ecclesiarchy. With their new role, they changed their titles, being renamed as the Adepta Sororitas, with the Sisters of Battle acting as their militant arm. They were trained to the very limits of what a non-modified human could achieve. And with their unmatched faith in the Emperor, they could now stand as a prodigious force against the heretical enemies of man. Shortly after adopting their new name, the sisters set out on a mighty crusade, with the conflicts being known as the Wars of Faith, and they were intended to bring the Emperor's light back to the regions of the galaxy, which had been ravaged by not only the warp storms, but also from Van Dyer's bloody reign. It was during this period of reformation that the sisterhood was divided between the previously mentioned non-militant and militant orders. The broad skill set of their organization was simply too great to ignore, and it was seen as wasteful to commit every sister to the crusading fleets.
Makes sense.
As such, some of the more scholarly or pious of sisters were chosen to act as the heads of the peaceful sects, such as with the orders Pronatus, who are entrusted with safeguarding the various artifacts and relics of the ecclesiarchy. Nevertheless, in a galaxy as treacherous as ours, there was a dire need for an army who could bring the fires of holy faith to mankind's numerous enemies. With this in mind, the Sisters of Battle stood ready to act as the exemplars of the Emperor's spirit, and they would burn his name into the very stars should it be asked of them. Alicia Dominica was chosen as the righteous leader of the entire organization.
A very Joan of Arc kind of looking painting there. Even the armor is very kind of medieval looking. I like that though. I like this like stained glass window kind of look. It's pretty tight.
Alicia Dominica was chosen as the righteous leader of the entire organization, and it would be directed from both the great ecclesiarchal palace upon Holy Terror, as well as from the fortified cardinal world of Ophelia VII. As the years passed, it soon became evident that the vast armies of the Sisterhood would be more effective if they could spread their wings across the galaxy, fighting as separate forces throughout the many war zones of the Imperium. As such, the successor of Sebastian Thor, Ecclesiarch Alexis XXII, ordained the founding of 4 orders, with their leaders being drawn from the companions of Alicia Dominica, who accompanied her during her visit with the God Emperor. These would be the Orders of the Ebon Chalice, of the Valorous Heart, of the Argent Shroud, and of the Fiery Heart. During the 38th millennia, 2 more orders were founded to honor the final remaining companions, and these were the orders of the Bloody Rose and of the Sacred Rose. Perhaps to placate the High Lords,
Lots of orders.
Thor also decreed that the Sisters of Battle should act as the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus, innately tying the 2 organizations together. This act, known as the Convocation of Nephilim, may have been done to ensure that the sisters are forever kept in line by the Inquisition, who will go to any lengths to ensure that their actions adhere to the Emperor's will. It is highly unlikely that this would be a necessary action to take, however, since, as we are all aware, there are perhaps none who are more faithful adherents to the Emperor than of the Sisterhood. Additionally, forming the Sisters of Battle was clearly a way to get around the decree passive and allowed the ecclesiarchy to still hold a military force.
Right.
As such, perhaps tying them to the Inquisition meant that this exploit would be overlooked, as the Ordo Hereticus would surely be pleased to have such an army of loyal and zealous warriors behind them, regardless of what decrees it may break. Alternatively, some believe that Alicia Dominica only agreed to this because it fell in line with what the Emperor imparted to her within the imperial palace. They claim that the task given to the sisters was of such dire importance that they were willing to give up their independence and fall in line with the Inquisition just to see the Emperor's mission through to its bloody end.
Interesting.
In any case, their fervent faith in the Emperor should be all the assurance needed for those who may doubt their loyalties. The sisters are utterly fanatical towards worshipping the Emperor, and all who may stand to oppose him will be met with nothing but endless fire and a holy fury.
Awesome. Awesome. Great video, honestly. That was the Scholar's lore, founding of the Sisters of Battle, Warhammer 40k lore. Very interesting. It very much sounded like a Dark Ages mixed with the Spanish Inquisition kind of storytelling of how the church really came to power and one man really took over the Imperium and was basically using it seemingly for his own purposes or what his own beliefs were, and not actually from the beliefs of the Emperor. And it, interestingly enough, led to another civil war. I had no idea that there was another war that kind of happened over this after the heresy. Obviously, it's not as it didn't turn out to be as big of a war or a prolonged thing as the heresy did. But from it came Sisters of Battle. It's interesting that they were pretty much their own kind of order and sect on this lone world, And I knew that Van Dyer's little parlor trick was gonna come back and bite him in the ass in the end, like it did. It does go to make you wonder, you know, what really did Dominica see? What did the Emperor tell her? Clearly she had some kind of vision of what the Emperor really wanted for, I mean, I don't know, would you know, if she had been shown a vision of what the Emperor really wanted for the Empire, would they even want to be part of any kind of organized religion based around the Emperor? You know what I mean? Because obviously he doesn't want, you know, to be worshipped, etc. Worst part, Gilman could have nipped this in the bud before he was indisposed for millennia. Then again, would the Imperium hold together without the cult of the Emperor? Yeah, I mean, and that's what I've said, you know, earlier in another video. It's a situation where really the worship of the Emperor and the faith in the Emperor is kind of the thing that really has held the Imperium together. You know, I feel like without the church, there probably would have been numerous wars going on to fill the vacuum of power without the Emperor there. And then, I mean, who knows what really would have happened? You know, maybe the Golden Throne would have been destroyed. You know what I mean? Who knows? But very good video going over the founding of the Battle Sisters. And like I said, man, they can fix me. They can fix me, man. They can show me the way to the light of the Emperor anytime. I have no problem. I have no problem at all. Yeah, the cult was already going stronger than height of heresy, and everyone was just too busy doing anything about it until they were gone. Yeah. I mean, it only makes sense too, right? You know, with how powerful the Emperor is, it only makes sense that certain people would see them or see the Emperor that way and want to worship him. It honestly is surprising to me that a lot of the Primarchs from their home worlds didn't have cults form around them and were worshipped as gods or demigods. Because, I mean, they were, you know, physical beings that could have been, you know, any of them on any kind of planet, especially like pre-industrial planets. You know, the superstitions could have easily been, you know, they were delivered to us from a fallen star and have come to save us and take us into this new era, blah blah blah. You know, it can be easily construed, and any kind of religion could be formed around any of the Primarchs. You know what I mean? Sanguinius is worshipped, but I mean, come on, look at him. I mean, yeah, especially someone like Sanguinius. I mean, he's got the look of an angel, you know? I haven't gotten to his lore yet, so I don't know much about that yet, but we're going to get to that. So, but yeah, great video. The Battle Sisters can fix me anytime. They can show me the way to the light of the Emperor. You know, I would have no problem, you know, being taught. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I appreciate y'all hanging out. If you enjoyed this video, do consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and helps the channel grow. But I appreciate you guys just taking the time to come out and hang out and watch this video with me. If you want to join in with our discussions, I am doing this live, as you can see, for some of my YouTube members. So if you want to join in our discussions, you can feel free to hit the join button down below and take a look at the YouTube membership tiers and see if any of those have any kind of interest in you. But for now, that's going to do it for this video, guys. And we're going to continue on with our post discussion after this video. And I will see you guys on the next one. Hope you're having a wonderful day whenever you watch this. Take it easy.